Right. Thank you for that. I want to dig in a little bit on a point that you brought up, which is the impact that coronavirus, the pandemic, recession, unemployment, as well as the concurrent civil movement against police violence and institutionalized discrimination. You talked a bit about how those will impact the three layers of the cake that you're focused on, the demographic shifts. I wonder if we could dig a little deeper about how the stable long-term trends that Cake Ventures invest against is impacted by these really dynamic and uncertain times. Do you expect that, for instance, the composition of your portfolio will change, or the needs of your companies or the needs of your founders will change?
I definitely see the needs of founders changing. I have founders in my portfolio now, and at the beginning of shelter in place and COVID, we were very concerned with, long-term stability. And so I worked really closely with a lot of those companies to figure out, the very clear markers of success. What's your burn rate? How much are you spending? And really, I think that companies that are going to be resilient during this time are going to be those companies who think about ways to reduce burn when they need to and be really resilient there, but also really take into account the fact that education is changing, for instance, and we're doing more at-home education and what that means for children and families. So, of course, that impacts a couple of areas. That impacts women, because women are often the people who are holding the brunt of childcare and also often juggling a full-time job. And so I think there are opportunities to make that much easier for women, tackling that second layer of the cake that I talked about, making that much easier for women. So I think that companies are going to be identifying really big opportunities that come out of coronavirus and rampant unemployment and shelter in place and all of these things that are happening now, and turning those into long-term plays that take advantage of the shift in culture, in societal pressures, and in demographics. I look for companies that can be resilient and really understand how to weather the different economic storms. And so far, I've just been incredibly impressed by the way that founders have either, pivoted in some ways or taken something that was much later in their roadmap and moved it up in the roadmap to take advantage of today's climate, or just been really thoughtful about the ways that they approach everything from acquisition to fundraising.
Right, great. And I want to hit on fundraising specifically because I've heard from founders, and I imagine you have heard the same, that there's some uncertainty about how to approach fundraising in the current environment, and uncertainty of where VCs are and if the dynamics of fundraising have changed at all. So for the founders in the audience today, can you talk a bit about how fundraising as well as business development and company growth changes given the current conditions?
Definitely. I think that, when we first went under shelter in place and when COVID first really hit the United States, there was a little bit of a pause from VCs around fundraising. And I think that now that we've had some time to sort of collect ourselves and understand, where companies are and potentially where the market is going a little bit more, I think that a lot of VCs have started to be a lot more confident about starting to reach out to founders and do new deals that often originate without, meeting in person. So I'm seeing much larger uptick in that. I will say from a personal level, I think that um, good VCs who have been present and have been not taking their foot off the gas as much. I think that our deal flow has continued to thrive even during this really challenging time period, and which is great for founders because we're actually willing to get on Zoom, create those new relationships, and in a lot of cases make those deals in a completely new way. I think that what some of the things that we're thinking about and that we're looking at is uh, is the market that this founder is going after, is it growing or is it shrinking due to COVID? And in some cases, I certainly have had founders pitch something that is directly COVID related. And while I think you should be thinking about the impacts of COVID on your business, I'm really looking for a company that is going to thrive over 5, 7, 10 years versus an immediate response to COVID right now that is only relevant for this particular time period. I also, again, you go back to the idea of resiliency. You know, while we are still continuing to look for big outcomes, and a unicorn, company is always attractive. I think right now the companies that are going to thrive in this moment are more like camels. They're able to gather resources and save them for a very long journey, right?
Right.
And so thinking about yourself and your company and thinking about how you can be resilient over the long term, from when you decide to raise funds to how you decide to staff up and grow your team, to how you approach customer acquisition and what you're spending on a monthly basis, and really keeping a very clear eye on those things is going to be incredibly impressive to a lot of investors right now.